What is a sound that people should know means immediate danger? I was younger, stupid in the confident way only youth can be. I was hiking with friends, showing off, pretending I wasn't scared of anything. The sun was bright, the rocks were warm, and everything felt safe. Then I saw it. A snake curled on a flat rock, perfectly still. It looked almost unreal, like a prop. My brain didn't scream danger. It whispered curiosity. I picked up a long stick and nudged it, thinking I was in control because the stick gave me distance. The snake didn't strike. It rattled. That sound hit like a gunshot, sharp, fast, vibrating straight into my spine. I'd heard it in videos, but hearing it in real life is different. It doesn't sound like a warning in a movie. It sounds like the ground itself is telling you, you're about to lose. My body moved before my thoughts did. I sprinted backwards so hard I almost tripped over my own feet. My friends yelled, laughing at first, until they heard the rattle too. Then nobody was laughing. We backed away slowly, eyes locked on the rock, hearts pounding. The snake stayed coiled, head raised, not chasing. It could have. It didn't. It was giving us a chance we didn't deserve. That's what shocked me most afterward. The rattlesnake didn't want to waste venom. It wanted space. The rattle wasn't aggression. It was mercy. A final, polite announcement before consequences. When we were far enough away, I finally exhaled. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't even hold my water bottle properly. I kept imagining what would have happened if I'd stepped closer, or if the snake had been tired of warning me. I never touched another wild snake again. I never tried to prove bravery with stupidity again, because that rattle wasn't just a sound. It was the cleanest lesson I ever got. Nature doesn't owe you patience. Sometimes it gives you one warning anyway, and if you're smart, you listen the first time. Next story. I woke up to a sound that didn't belong in a normal night. Not a snore, not coughing, something worse. It was raspy and wet, like breathing through water. A gurgling, irregular pull of air followed by a long pause. Too long. Then another gasp. The kind of sound that makes your body go cold before your mind understands why. I leaned closer and called their name. No response. I touched their shoulder, shook gently. Nothing. The breathing continued, but it didn't sound like living. It sounded like the body was trying, failing, trying again. My hands started shaking. Part of me wanted to believe it was a nightmare or deep sleep, but deep sleep doesn't sound like drowning on dry land. I remembered hearing about it once, agonal breathing. It can happen when someone's heart has stopped or is about to stop. It looks like breathing, but it isn't effective. It's the brain's last signal firing, the body's final reflex. People waste precious minutes thinking, they're still breathing, it's fine. It's not fine. I called emergency services and put the phone on speaker. The operator's voice was steady, instructing me clearly. If they're unresponsive, begin chest compressions now. My mind screamed no, but my hands moved anyway. Press, release, counting, sweating, praying. Those minutes were the longest of my life. Every sound in the room became sharp. My own breathing, the creak of the bed frame, the operator's calm countdown. When help finally arrived, everything became fast and professional. Equipment, oxygen, questions, urgency. Later, when the crisis ended, I kept replaying that first sound, that gurgling breath, that pause. Now I know. If you ever hear that kind of breathing and the person won't wake up, don't wait. Don't hope. Don't let them sleep. Call for help immediately, because that sound isn't rest. It's the body calling for rescue. Next story. The snow looked perfect, quiet, smooth, untouched. That's what makes it deadly. In the backcountry, beauty can hide a trap so clean you won't see it until you're already falling. We were climbing a slope that felt stable. No cracks, no sliding, just crisp, cold air and the soft crunch of our skis. I remember feeling confident, like the mountain was calm. Then I heard it, a deep, hollow whoomp. It wasn't a crack. It wasn't a snap. It sounded like the ground exhaled, like a giant drum was hit under the snow. The vibration traveled through my boots and into my bones. For a split second, everything felt weightless. My stomach dropped because I knew what it meant. The snowpack had collapsed. The layer beneath us had failed, compressing like a rug being pulled from under the surface. That sound is one of the clearest warnings you can get. It means the slope can slide. It means the mountain just showed you how fragile it is. We didn't discuss it. We didn't vote. We moved. We turned downhill carefully but fast, keeping distance between each other. Every second felt like a gamble. I could almost imagine the snow breaking open, a white wave swallowing us without a sound. When we reached a safer area, we stopped and looked back. The slope still looked peaceful, unchanged. That's the terrifying part. The mountain doesn't look dangerous when it decides to kill you. The danger is inside it, hidden under layers of quiet. I stood there shaking, not from cold, but from how close we came to being erased without drama. One wrong decision and we'd become part of the landscape. That whoomph taught me a rule I'll never ignore. If the snow makes that sound, you don't negotiate with it. You leave, because the mountain already gave you your warning, and it won't give you a second one. Next story. It was early morning, quiet enough to hear your own footsteps. I was walking near the street when I heard a sound that didn't match the world. Sizzle. Not a normal hiss, not rain on pavement. It sounded exactly like bacon frying in a pan. Steady crackling, sharp, alive. But there was no smell, no food truck, no breakfast, just cold air and silence. I looked around, confused, and then I saw it. A power line down near the sidewalk, twitching slightly like a living thing. The cable wasn't just lying there. It was feeding electricity into the ground, and the wet patch beneath it was boiling in tiny bursts. That's when fear hit hard. People think electricity is dramatic. Sparks, flames, bright blue arcs. But real danger can look boring. The current can travel through the ground in invisible rings, making a deadly zone around the wire. You don't need to touch it to die. You just need to step wrong. Instinct told me to run, but running is how you die. If your feet separate too far, the electricity can pass up one leg and down the other, straight through your heart. So I did the weirdest thing. I shuffled backward. Small steps, feet close together, like I was sliding on ice. My brain screamed at me to sprint, but I trusted the rule. A car passed on the road. A person on the other side of the street slowed down to stare, curious. I wanted to yell, but even yelling felt like wasting oxygen. I just kept moving away until the sizzling sound faded and the danger felt less immediate. Minutes later, emergency workers arrived and blocked the area. One of them looked at me and nodded like I did the right thing. I nodded back, still shaking. Now I tell people this. If you ever hear bacon frying where there's no food, back away. Shuffle. Don't lift your feet. Don't touch anything metal nearby. Don't try to be brave. Electricity doesn't need fire to kill you. Sometimes it only needs you to be curious for 1 second too long. Next story. The ship felt peaceful. Waves rolling, wind clean. People relaxed like nothing could go wrong out there. That's the dangerous illusion. The ocean doesn't look angry until it already has you. We were walking the deck when the sound hit. Not music, not an announcement. A horn signal, 7 short blasts and 1 long. The moment I heard it, I knew it wasn't a drill in spirit, even if it was one on paper. That pattern is different from every casual sound on a ship. It's sharp, official, and impossible to ignore. The kind of signal that turns tourists into passengers and passengers into survivors. Around me, people hesitated. Some smiled nervously like it was entertainment. Others looked confused, waiting for someone to explain it to them. But the crew didn't slow down. They moved immediately. Fast steps, tight faces, radios crackling, doors opening, instructions being repeated. I grabbed a life jacket and followed the flow toward the assembly area. The hallway suddenly felt narrow. The floor felt more alive, like the ship itself was a moving animal. Even the air smelled different, salty and mechanical. At the muster station, the staff counted heads, checked names, and pointed people into lines. No shouting, no chaos, just speed and control. That's what scared me most. If trained professionals are moving calmly but urgently, it means the situation is serious enough to demand discipline. I stood there looking at the ocean through the glass and realized something. In real danger, there's no dramatic soundtrack, no slow motion, no heroic speeches. There's only a sound, a decision, and a countdown you can't see. Later, when the alarm ended, everyone laughed it off like a moment of excitement. But I didn't. I kept hearing that pattern in my head. 7 short, 1 long, because that sound isn't a warning to pay attention. It's a warning that you may not have much time left to choose correctly. Next story. The sky was clear and quiet, the kind of evening where everything feels normal. No rain, no wind, no storms on the horizon. I was walking outside when the air started to sound wrong. At first it was faint, a soft buzzing like a faraway electrical hum. It wasn't coming from a speaker or a phone. It felt like it was coming from the world itself. The streetlights seemed brighter than they should be. The power lines overhead looked perfectly still, yet I could hear them. The buzzing grew stronger, then turned into a sharper vibration, like the air was charged. I stopped walking, my skin prickling with that strange, static feeling you get right before something big happens. A normal person would ignore it. I almost did. But something in my body refused to keep moving forward. The sound was a warning you don't learn in school, nature's countdown. Then it happened. A violent crack exploded nearby, bright enough to turn the world white for a blink. Lightning slammed into something close, and the sound hit my chest like a punch. The ground felt like it jumped under my feet. The smell arrived a second later. Hot metal, ozone, burnt air. If I'd been 10 steps farther, I would have been standing under the exact place it struck. Afterward, everything went quiet again, like nothing happened. Cars drove by, people laughed from inside a house, but I stood there shaking, realizing how close I came to being erased in one flash. That buzzing isn't just noise. It's the sound of electricity gathering, hunting for a path. It can mean the charge is close enough to strike where you are. Now I respect that sound. If the air starts to hum and the world feels electrically alive, I don't look for a better view of the storm. I get away from open spaces, tall objects, and metal, because lightning doesn't warn you twice. Next story. We were camping in a quiet area, the kind of place where the night feels alive. Crickets, distant owls, the soft sound of wind through branches. The fire was dying down, and we were about to sleep when we heard it. A woman screaming. It wasn't a short shout. It was a long, sharp, desperate scream that sliced through the dark like a knife. My friend immediately stood up. "Someone needs help," he said. His instinct was good. His timing was dangerous. I grabbed his wrist hard enough to stop him. "Don't," I whispered. He stared at me like I was cruel, but I wasn't hearing a human voice. I was hearing something else, something too high, too wild, too clean. The scream came again, closer this time. And it didn't sound like fear anymore. It sounded like a trap. My mind remembered what I'd once heard from an old ranger. If you hear a woman screaming in the woods at night, it might not be a woman. It could be a bobcat. Their calls sound eerily human, like someone being attacked. We stayed still. My friend slowly sat back down. The darkness beyond the fire felt thicker now, like it was watching us. Another scream echoed, then a rustle in the brush, light and quick. Something moved along the edge of our vision, never stepping into the open. We didn't chase it, we didn't call out, we didn't act like prey. We added more wood to the fire, made the light bigger, and kept our voices low. Eventually, the sounds faded into the deeper forest. In the morning, we found paw prints near the tree line. Small, cat-like, fresh. People think danger announces itself clearly. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes danger wears the sound of a person, hoping you'll walk into the dark to help. That night taught me something important. Compassion is powerful, but survival is smarter when you pause, listen, and recognize what nature is pretending to be. Next story. I was deep in the forest, far past any roads, far past cell service, where the air smells like pine and damp earth. The trail was empty, and the only sound was my boots stepping over leaves. Then I heard it, a low roar in the distance, steady, growing, like a freight train coming straight toward me. At first my brain tried to explain it away. Maybe wind, maybe a waterfall, maybe some far-off highway I didn't know existed. But the sound wasn't random. It had weight, it had speed. It sounded like something huge, fast, and unstoppable. And the forest around me started reacting. Birds erupted from the trees. Squirrels disappeared. Even the air felt different, like it was tightening. I stopped walking. That's when I noticed the second warning. The wind shifted. It didn't feel cool anymore. It felt warm, like someone opened an oven door. The roar got louder, and a faint crackling joined it, like dry paper being crushed. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a train. This was fire. Wildfire doesn't always creep. Sometimes it climbs. When it crowns, it jumps into the treetops and races through them like a wave of flame. That roaring sound is the forest being shredded by heat and wind, branches snapping, needles exploding, oxygen feeding the monster. I didn't look for the perfect path. I didn't try to be brave. I turned and ran. I ran until my lungs felt like sandpaper and my legs shook. Behind me, the roar kept coming, swallowing everything. When I finally reached a clearing, smoke drifted through the trees like fog, thick and bitter. I watched the edge of the forest darken and understood how close I was to dying without ever seeing the flames. If you're in the woods and you hear a train with no tracks around, don't stand there listening. That sound is nature telling you the ending before you see the story. Next story. The lab was running like normal. Keyboards tapping, fans whirring, small chatter bouncing off white walls. Nothing felt urgent until the supervisor walked in. She didn't rush. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't look angry or scared. She looked polite. She stood in the middle of the room, smiled like she was about to start a routine announcement, and said softly, "Everyone please stay exactly where you are." That sentence hit harder than a shout. If she had yelled, people might have argued or panicked. But the calmness was worse. Calm meant she already knew something was wrong. Calm meant she didn't have time for questions. Chairs stopped moving. Hands hovered above keyboards. Someone's coffee cup froze halfway to their mouth. In that silence, you could hear tiny things you normally ignore. Fabric rubbing, someone swallowing, the faint click of a machine relay. My mind raced through possibilities. Spill? Leak? Electrical fault? Contamination? Nobody wanted to say it out loud because naming it made it real. The supervisor didn't explain. She just watched us like she was counting heads, measuring reactions. Then she added, still gentle, "Don't touch anything. Don't step anywhere. Just breathe and wait." That's when the fear became physical. In a normal emergency, you run. In a real emergency, you're told to stop. Because the danger isn't chasing you. It's already around you. Minutes later, security arrived. The section was sealed. We were escorted out slowly, like we were carrying something fragile that could break the entire world if we moved wrong. I never forgot the lesson. When someone in a controlled place speaks too calmly during a problem, it means the problem is bigger than your emotions. A quiet voice can be the loudest alarm you'll ever hear. Next story. The playground was loud a second ago, shouting, laughing, sneakers scraping the ground. Then it happened. The sound dropped out like someone cut the power. Not a normal pause. A full, heavy silence. Every kid froze at the same time. Even the adults stopped talking. I didn't hear crying. I didn't hear footsteps. Just nothing. That kind of silence isn't peaceful. It's a warning. It means something has changed so fast the brain hasn't caught up yet. I scanned the crowd, trying to find the cause. A little boy near the slide stared toward the street with his mouth open. A mother's hand was still in the air like she'd been waving, but she wasn't moving anymore. Then I saw it. One of the maintenance machines by the fence had stopped mid-hum. The driver wasn't in the seat. The bucket arm was frozen above the ground like it had been abandoned in a rush. That's when the fear landed in my stomach, cold and sharp. Machines don't stop on their own in the middle of work unless something forces them to stop. I didn't wait for confirmation. I grabbed the nearest child by the hoodie and pulled him back, then waved the others away, pushing people toward the building. A second later, a scream broke the silence. Someone finally saw what everyone's body had sensed first. Later, when everything calmed down, I kept thinking about that moment. The silence arrived before the danger made sense. And it taught me something I won't forget. When noise suddenly dies where noise should live, don't stand there trying to understand it. Move first, understand later. Next story. The night was heavy with humidity, thick with the sounds of nature. The frogs were croaking, and the air smelled like wet earth. Then came a sound that didn't belong. A long, low growl, followed by a rumble that shook the ground. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't thunder. The animals fell silent. The forest paused. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. I'd heard about this sound from my grandfather. Something rare, something terrifying. A mountain lion. I slowly backed away, my eyes darting to every movement in the shadows. The growl came again, this time closer, almost a warning. I wasn't in its territory, but I was too close to its path. I couldn't see it, but but I could feel it in the air, in the earth beneath my feet. Its presence was more terrifying than if it had attacked. The moment dragged, stretching like the silence before a storm. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I just kept backing away slowly, aware that any sudden movement might provoke it. The growl didn't return, but the tension remained. When I finally reached my car and drove away, I glanced at the trees one last time. The forest seemed alive in a way I had never noticed before. It didn't owe me anything, no warnings, no protection. It was its own world, and I had intruded on it. Next story. It was a calm morning, and the sound of the wind in the trees was the only thing I could hear. I was sitting by the creek, letting the cool water run over my fingers. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp whistle pierced the air. I froze, my heart racing. The sound didn't belong. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't natural. Then, the ground trembled slightly. Not a lot, but enough for me to notice. It wasn't an animal moving. It was something bigger, something underground. Suddenly, the whistle came again, louder, more urgent. The sound was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I looked around, trying to figure out where it was coming from. The trees whispered in the wind, but they didn't offer an answer. Then it hit me. The sound was a warning, a gas leak. The whistling was gas escaping from the underground pipeline nearby. I didn't waste time. I stood up and ran to my car, my ears still ringing with the whistle in my head. I dialed emergency services as I sped away, telling them about the leak. As I drove away from the creek, I realized how often we ignore strange sounds, brushing them off. But this one, this whistle, was a life-saving signal. Nature doesn't warn you with words, but with the signs you have to listen to. Next story. I was hiking the trail, completely alone, lost in my thoughts and the sound of my boots crunching the leaves. The forest was calm, and the sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the path. Then, out of nowhere, I heard it, a faint, steady sound, like scratching. It was quiet at first, barely audible over the wind, but as I walked on, it grew louder, more distinct. My heart skipped a beat as I realized what it was. I'd read about this in survival books. When you hear scratching in the woods, especially if it's rhythmic and steady, it could be a bear. Bears often scratch trees to mark territory or sharpen their claws. I stopped in my tracks. The scratching continued, moving slightly closer. My instincts told me to stay still. I slowly backed away, my eyes scanning the trees for movement. The noise stopped suddenly, and the forest became eerily quiet. The air felt thick, like something was watching me. I couldn't see anything, but the feeling was too strong to ignore. I decided not to take any chances. I turned and started walking back, slowly but steadily. I didn't run. That's the mistake I'd made before. Later, when I reached the trailhead, I felt the adrenaline leave my body, and I could finally breathe. But I knew one thing. Silence in the woods could be dangerous. Next story. The street was busy, cars honking, people walking, the usual noise of the city. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. The honking faded. People slowed. A quiet settled over the scene like the city held its breath. I didn't hear the ambulance. I didn't hear the police sirens. Just this calm, strange pause. For a moment, I thought it was a power outage, but the lights were still on. Then, out of nowhere, a loud bang shattered the stillness. A door slammed open. People screamed and panic erupted in every direction. I felt my heart race. What had happened? Was it a gunshot? Was there an accident? I didn't know, but I knew it wasn't over. People rushed past me, some looking over their shoulders, others trying to get inside buildings. I didn't stop to ask questions. I just followed the crowd. When I reached the corner, I could see the emergency vehicles. The flashing lights were like a signal that the danger had passed, but the unsettling silence before it hit me like a wave. The city doesn't stop like that. It's always moving, always loud. But when it pauses, when the noise vanishes, that's when you should worry. Next story. It was a clear, peaceful night in the forest. The stars were out and the moonlight painted the trees in silver. It felt like the perfect night for a walk. Then I heard it, a rustling followed by a low growl. At first I thought it was an animal, maybe a bear, maybe a wolf. But the growl didn't sound like it came from the ground. It sounded like it was coming from above. I froze, my heart pounding. The growl echoed again, but this time it was followed by a deep, throaty bark. My mind raced. What kind of animal could make both sounds? Then it clicked. A cougar. Cougars are stealthy and they rarely make noise unless they're provoked. I didn't want to find out if I had just provoked one. I stood still, barely breathing, waiting to hear what it would do next. The rustling came again, closer this time. I started to slowly back away, trying not to make a sound. I could feel its presence behind me, like a shadow moving just out of sight. I didn't run, I didn't scream. I just moved carefully, step by step, until I reached the safety of a nearby cabin. The growl stopped. The cougar was still out there, somewhere in the dark. But I had learned one important lesson. In the forest, silence can be as dangerous as noise.